Steve here with Table Rock Tea Company. It is now the second week of May and we are just starting to fertigate in our greenhouse. Now, I know I did a video earlier on this, but I think it bears not just repeating, but a little more detail on some tips and tricks on using a fertigator. It took us quite a while to kind of dial things in, so hopefully our experience and mistakes will benefit you and you won't have to make the same. So I'll just kind of walk around. This might be a little bit of a lengthy video, but I want to show you how we use our fertigator here, particularly for seedlings, in particular for tea seedlings. Tea seedlings are extremely sensitive to all things, really. They're sensitive to light, they're sensitive to chemicals. In the early years, we lost a ton, I mean thousands of plants to just bad fertilizing regimens here in the greenhouse, so they can get toxic really fast. At the same time, with our control group, they really do need to be fertilized even in the greenhouse through the year, just to get them a healthy start before you field plant them. So let me show you a little bit here. This again is the soluble fertilizer that we use. I'm going to come back to this. This is an old bag, but essentially this is what we use. We get it from Southern Ag. It's a 20-20-20 fertilizer, and it's a low dye. You can see it says low dye up there. I actually prefer high dye, but they didn't have any this year, and I'll explain that in a second when we show you how we use these soluble fertilizers. So the main thing here that you're going to want to look at is the concentration. Okay, so on the bags it's going to show you concentrations for fertigation. Okay, and it'll say things like let's see, where does it show? Okay, in a ratio of 1 to 100, which is what we run. If you want a concentration of 50 parts per million or 100 parts per million or 150, you can see how much you need to put in ounces. It says right there, ounces by weight per gallon of concentrated solution. And so that's how you figure that out. You figure out what your concentration is that you're going to run, whether it's 1 to 100, and then figure out from different tables what your plants can use. So for us, it's Camellia sinensis. So then when you go over here, this is the fertigator, and I'll show you how that is set up and works. But we use a Dima Mix-Right TF5. Okay, so this is our fertigator. We really like it. It's Israeli. It's built kind of like a tank. On the top, this is an on-off switch, basically, to prime the pump or to cut it off. And what you do is you have your concentrated liquid. So you take that fertilizer in whatever ratio. This is a 5-gallon bucket. So let's say for our concentration we needed to do 1 ounce per gallon. Then in this I would put 5 ounces by weight in the 5-gallon bucket, and that's my concentrate. Then when you go up here on the fertigator, it's a dial in ratio, and I'll see if I can kind of zoom in on the numbers. There we go. Yeah, you can see that, how it says 1.4, 1.6, 2.0. That's the concentration. Okay, so 1 to 100 is what we usually mix at. Okay, so anyway, that's what you set in the dial to. Again, according to the numbers on that bag. And what that means is that for every 100 gallons that passes through the fertigator, 100 gallons of fresh water, it will suck up 1 gallon of your concentration. And the way it does that is through a venturi. Okay, so if you look back here, I'll kind of go through what our circuit looks like. This is the inflow. So in other words, water's coming from our well through a valve, a one-way valve. That's another thing I'll show you that's really important when you're using fertigation. But it comes this way, and then it goes out to the greenhouse, to all the wands and stuff that way. Okay, so you can see there's a valve here, ball valve here, ball valve here, ball valve here. Now, right now we've got the fertigator on. So what's happening is the water is coming up, going over, passing through the fertigator, going out, because this up here is blocked off. If I did the reverse, if I flip that, and open this, now just fresh water is going to go like that. It's going to bypass the fertigator. Okay, now here's what happens. So this works on the Venturi principle. So essentially what happens is the water comes up, it goes and shoots across this hole. So this tube is coming up and there's a hole. So it's just like if you blow into a flute, you know, playing a flute, you blow across the hole and it basically pulls air in and creates the sound. Same thing here. So when the water goes, it creates a suction, and that suction is regulated by that dial on how much it's going to suck up. So hopefully that makes sense. So as you hear this running, you'll actually hear this thing going click, 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 click. And I always make sure I watch the concentration in the bucket drop too, to make sure that it's going. So anyway, then once you start getting it fertigating, then it extends out to the rest of your circuit. In this case, we have watering wands and that. So over here, I want to show you what we have coming from our well. We just have these hydrants, nothing super fancy. But what we have here, we set up a bit of a bypass, okay? So this is the fresh water coming from our well. Now, if you're gonna run any kind of chemicals, it doesn't matter if it's fertilizer, it doesn't matter if it's organic or what, you need to put in a serious one-way check valve so that from your fertigation, nothing goes back into your fresh water and contaminates your water. Okay, so that's super, super important. On this one, we've got a filter system on it. It's a canister filter. You can take that off. We've got a bleed valve here that you can open it to air for the winter time, because we don't really tend to fertigate much in the winter. These hydrants, the way these hydrants work is there's a piston and there is a weep valve down underneath the frost line. And so when you close the hydrant, the weep valve opens and everything that's in the pipes drains below so it doesn't freeze on you. Now what we have this is our circuit for fertigation. When we finally are finished with fertigating for the year, these are just quick disconnects. We'll disconnect those, and then we've got this pigtail right here that will connect this straight to that. So it'll bypass the fertigator completely, because we like to drain the entire fertigator. Since it's plastic, we don't want that to be frozen and crack anything as we go. But let me show you down here why the dye is so important, or at least for me. I guess it's not super, super important, but it'll make sense here in just a second. So the dye in the fertilizer and the fertigation solution lets us know what's being run. And I don't know if you can appreciate this on the video. I hope we can. But this one, since we just started, this is a fresh line of water. There's no fertigation in here. So when I start to fill up this bucket, you're gonna see it go from clear to blue. And that means the line has been flushed, and now everything coming out of the wand is filled with fertilizer. Let me show you that. All right. So you can see clear, clear, clear. Let's see if we can see it start changing blue. Usually takes about 15-20 seconds. Okay. I don't know if you can see it, but it's starting to get darker. Yep. So you got white and dark. So, yeah. So anyway, now you can see that it's got a little blue tinge to it. And that means that all has fertilized liquid in it, or fertigation liquid in it. So that's good, because what you want to do is make sure that every plant gets the fertilized, the good stuff. Now, on the reverse side, what we do in our greenhouse, because these are, again, little seedlings, is that we will fertilize 2 times. We water on Tuesdays and Fridays here. So what we'll do is we will, once a month, we will do an application of fertilizer, and we will fertilize on Tuesday and Friday just to make sure that everything gets hit. And then we'll flip it over and we'll flush the system and just water them for the next 3 weeks with plain water. Now, why do we do that? Is because plants, any plant really, can develop a salt toxicity Fertilizers are essentially soluble salts. They're different kinds of salts, not just, table salt, but different things that are in salt form. And so that will build up. And so if you don't flush it, you want to make sure that the plant gets it, but that it's flushed out. If you just make it so that you have stuff sitting in there and it never clears the pot, you'll get a salt toxicity. And sometimes you can tell. We're actually really good about that here. I don't know if I can give you an example. I don't think this is actually an example, but if you start, I think this is just some other dust or powder. But if you start seeing some scaled buildup of salts on the outside of your pots on the bottom where the weep holes are, it means more than likely you are over fertilizing your plants. You're not flushing them out with water enough. So anyway, it's super, super important. So that's how the fertigation works. We held off. Now, for those of you specifically watching this for tea seedlings, we like to make sure that those plants are in the pots and growing after they're transplanted for at least a week. My preference would be that they're in these pots for 3 to 4 weeks before we hit them with fertigation. But because we're running a commercial greenhouse and we're constantly pulling out thousands and thousands of seedlings, we're not quite finished transplanting yet. We still have maybe, I would say, another 1,000 or 2,000 to pull out. We're running somewhere around 15,000 plants this year. These are the ones that we have left to transplant. You can see there's not many. If you've watched our previous videos, we're almost at the end, thankfully. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea on how to use a fertigator. It is tricky. Start slow. Don't try to water things every day with fertilizer, and especially do low dose. We did all kinds of experiments, from high dose one shot, like once a month, to like low dose where they said it's a daily dose every day, and we ended up we killed so many plants that way, I can't even tell you. So now what we do is essentially a little more than a daily dose, but we only give it to them on 2 waterings once a month, and we'll do that through the whole year. I think we're actually going to keep it up through the winter this year, because last year we stopped around November, and we found that coming into March, those plants were a little anemic. They could have used a little more. The problem is the metabolism of the plant slows down in the winter, so it's not pulling up as much of the nutrients anyway, so you don't want to just leave them sit there. So it's always a balance. You're going to have to dial it in. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, certainly feel free to PM me or comment below. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to see what else is brewing here at Table Rock Tea Company.